Hey everybody, it's Brother Joe here at Altona. I appreciate you joining me as we spend a little bit of time this Monday morning. I have been thinking a lot about a phrase that I've heard several times, that the fastest way to a man's heart is through his stomach. And as a person who really enjoys a good meal, I have to say I can sympathize with that idea. I like that idea. But my experience tells me that the fastest way to a man's heart is through his wallet. I have seen many a time that a guy looks at the price tag of something and goes, I'll eat bologna sandwiches. I'd rather go to McDonald's than go to that restaurant. And it's not because the food's not great, it's because he's looking at his wallet. I look at that idea and I go, I wonder, is it any biblical text for it? And what I find myself is in the 19th chapter of Acts, where Paul has been teaching Christianity to a bunch of pagan worshipers, and so many pagan worshipers are abandoning their idol worship and becoming Christians, Christ followers of the way, as it was said at that time, that the local idol makers who had been making their living selling idols and selling incense and selling things to be placed on the idols and selling their little trinkets around the temples, they gathered together and said, we've got to get rid of this Paul. We're not upset that he's taken away from our idols. We don't really care about the God of the idols. What we care about is our wallets. He is robbing us. And so they band together and make false accusations against him, do everything they can to run him out of town because it's going to he is cutting into their bottom line. And I look around at our world today and say there's a lot of idols in our communities and in our country, among our world, and they don't seem to be that threatened by Christianity today. We don't seem to be cutting into their profits. People seem to be just fine right in the shadow of the steeple doing things that they should feel ashamed of because of the harm that it does to their walk with Christ. And so I want to challenge you from that idea that Paul says, that Paul found that he cut into people's wallets. That was the fastest way to the hearts of the people, is that whenever he affected their bottom line, they went, you're not going to be doing that around here. Why are we not affecting the bottom line? Why are the idol builders and the idol worshipers of our communities not threatened by the church? Because we're just not cutting into their bottom line. They're still building, they'll keep building one sports complex after another, and parents will sacrifice to send their kids to basketball camp and then tell them if the church will pay for it, they'll let them go to church camp. And while that mindset exists in our communities and even in the fringe of our churches, while that mindset exists, friend, we're not cutting into the profits of the idol makers. They're going to go worship at the soccer fields on Sunday and say, well, it's just a part of raising our kids. It's just a short-term thing. They're still going to do that. And we, as God's people, need to begin to passionately pursue Christ and share an infectious love with the people around us. Paul didn't come in there with a legalism and tell them you're wrong for going to the temple. He came in and said, I know a better way where you'll find peace that those idols won't provide. You'll find a family connection that you won't get around those idol worships. You will find an eternal peace and a joy unthinkable. He draws them into this love walk with Jesus, and they abandon their idol worship. They're not forced out of it by legalism. They abandon it. It's one of the sweeping revivals that swept through a region in Ireland. One of the effects of that is that all the taverns in that region closed down because the men just quit going. What a great testimony of what God's love can do. We need to share that infectious love that would draw people to say, I want to be where God's people are. And so therefore they would abandon their idols, and their idol makers would begin to say, hey, what are those Christians doing? Let them come after us. That'd be a great testimony of how great of a movement our God is bringing. I hope you give a little bit of time to think about that and think about the fastest way to a man's heart's not through his stomach, but through his wallet. And we need to be touching men's hearts. We need to be touching the lives of people. So let's invite them into this love walk with Jesus Christ. I'm Brother Joe. I appreciate you joining me. If you would tag a friend so they can listen to that, or like it, or even comment on it so that others can see it, I would appreciate it. And I hope I get to see you on Sunday.